Hello, welcome to my post-development testing video. If we start the game and press on the magnifying glass with the plus icon, we will zoom into the cube itself enlarges, and similarly if we press on the minus icon, we do zoom out. There are upper and lower limits, so I can't zoom out any more than this. If the user was able to zoom out more, then they would see past the larger background, and I don't want that. Zooming in more, there doesn't necessarily have to be a limit for this. There was, I guess, nothing wrong with just zooming into the cube more and more, but I don't see why anyone would want that functionality, so I did set a limit for this as well. Testing out the pause button, when we press on the pause icon on the top left, the rest of the program does fade and the Rubik's Cube does actually become invisible, but also all of its functionality is removed. So we can't rotate, we can't turn it, we can't do anything. We can't actually press anything outside of these three buttons. Nothing works. These zooming in or out icons don't work. All we can press is these buttons, so we can press resume and everything goes back to normal. We can press how it works to view some information about how to use the game, or we can return to the main menu. So the pause button does work as expected. This next test will also appear in my robustness testing video, but since I put it in my post-development testing, I thought I should go over it. So pressing just about off a button should not work, but for the plus pause icon it does actually work. Pressing just about off a button. Pressing just off a button does actually activate the pause icon. However, I would argue that since this is on the top left and the user would not have to go to the top left of the screen with the mouse for any other reason, I think this is actually fine, and I think this is better. That there's actually a bit, it's quite forgiving actually. I don't think this would be an issue. So although technically this would be a fail, I think I will pass myself. Again, I'm doing this on a case-by-case basis. I don't think this is a bad thing, so I will pass myself on that. Just regarding the pause button, the other buttons as well, like if it's quite close it does activate, but again I don't think that's an issue. I'm pressing the pause button. Now these icons are really big, so I think for these ones it is important that it only activates when you actually click the buttons, and it does in fact only work when you click the buttons, right? So I'm pressing quite close to the buttons here, very close actually, but they don't activate, and when I click on them obviously they do work. So similarly with the cube, I think if I click on this side for example, it doesn't make a sound, but clicking around it doesn't make a sound. And here is also again important that only the side that you do click on activates, right? So for the buttons where it does actually matter, the test has been passed. The next test regards rotating the cube. So if you right click and drag our mouse along, the cube does rotate accordingly. Additionally, I've also added a feature. I don't think I've outlined it in my post-development testing. Yeah, I haven't, but I think I should go over it anyway. We can rotate the cube using WASD and the arrow keys. So we have passed this test as well. If one of the sides of the cube is rotated, it only rotates once or twice or however many times the user wishes to turn it. And I've outlined the reason for this in the table, and this is essentially because, you know, I want my computational model of the cube to agree somewhat with, I want to be as close as possible essentially to a real life cube, right? And part of that is the mechanics of the cube, not to a very deep level, but at least considering the friction between the pieces, right? If there was absolutely no friction or absolutely no resistive force, then these sides would turn forever, pretty much forever. I think the effect of weight would be negligible since it acts on both sides. For example, turn the left side, they would act equally on both sides, so I don't think that would actually make any difference. It would just cancel out on both sides. So again, this does sort of simulate the fact that in a real cube you would have friction and maybe even a magnetic force resisting the movement further. So yeah, the sides of the cube do not turn forever, and this test has been passed. When the side of the cube is turned, there is an animation to it. It doesn't turn instantly. So this test has been passed. The post-development testing has now officially been completed if we are going off of the table that I have constructed earlier when designing the program. There were some very small things that I put in there, such as the pause icon is displayed or the zoom icon is displayed, but I obviously didn't talk too in depth about that because that's already been mentioned in other tests. Some things that maybe I should go over which are not in my table, we can return to the main menu here, and going back will reset the state of the cube. So let me just show that again. Return to main menu, start. The state of the cube has been reset. Something else that you can do, probably just dipping. If you dip, that's it, the program is closed.